Hello, hello. Hello, people. Nope, just me.
Hello.
Hello. Hi. How are you doing, Benoit?
Good, good. How are you?
Great. Good. Good. Thank you. I don't know. Are Michael and Yakov on the call or? I don't know. It says muted and no video, so I don't know if they're here yet. Well, I guess they'll be here soon. How was your weekend?
Good. Thank you.
Great to
Yeah.
hear. Well, I'm glad to see and hear that the new calendar invite is working because people are able to join. That's great.
Yep.
Hi,
How was
Ivan.
your
Hi,
weekend?
Michael. Yeah, it was good. It was good. Thanks. Yeah, it got cold here, which is great. That's what it's supposed to do this time of year. It was very strange when it wasn't cold here.
Yep.
Yeah, how's
Hello.
everybody else doing? Hello. How's it going?
Good. Yeah, go here.
Great. Yep. Hello. So, Ivan, Michael, Rob, are you guys there? Haven't heard you. Oh,
Yes, here.
Setting up
oh, there we are.
the Zoom and calendar and everything.
Yeah. Is it it's all working? Okay, good. So I think Benji might not be able to make the call today, but he also said that he did get this calendar invite set up. Well, he got the details set up, which I was able to paste into the same calendar invite we've been using, but he's in the process of getting this meeting converted over to be in the foundation calendar. It's just a bit of an ordeal to get that to happen. So at some point, we'll probably cancel this calendar invite and get it switched over. And one other thing to call out, I know from the Apollo side, as you can probably guess by the fact that Benoit and I are not in the US and we're on the call, I think a lot of folks have Martin Luther King Day off today. So I think it's going to be pretty quiet from the Apollo side. So this might be everybody today. And where do we want to dive in? I know, Yakov, there's been a lot of back and forth in the main discussion thread of some work and verifying things that you've been trying out. Is that a good place to start the conversation today?
Yeah, I think so. Not sure if you can speak to it, Yakov, or if you'd want me to jump in. Up to you.
I'm a little listen only today just because I have a few things running around. It's about 5 p.m. today. So Rob, I've been chatting with Rob. I think it'd be great if you could take a point.
Awesome.
All right, cool. So I'm going to share my screen back into this large issue that we've been talking about for some time now.
Hi, everyone.
Hello.
Hey, Michael.
We're just getting started, Michael. We're diving in.
Yeah, so we've been talking about this for a while, about merging differs on the same object level, and if that could be a replacement for what we previously had as the label. And we were talking about, I put a bunch of examples in here, but one that we were talking about that I want to go over in some detail is this example where you have kind of this object that has a defer with the field underneath it, then the same object in another defer with another defer inside of that with a different field here. And I was saying how this could lead to getting two payloads with the same path. And I think that was just kind of a bias on my part because of how I had implemented it before we started merging these changes. And Yakov did a lot of great work with a new algorithm that would actually merge these together and keep the guarantee that you always have one payload per path. Yeah, this was what my implementation was yielding, where we would have foo and bar in separate payloads. But with Yakov's algorithm, we have now just the one payload with this nested object path, and you get all the fields there. And the difference is that what I was doing was when I encountered some defers, I would just kind of call collect fields again with it. And that didn't really have any knowledge of the rest of the query. Whereas Yakov's implementation, we keep track of each field node and which defer it belongs to at which depth. And then when you're executing the fields, you can selectively say like, I'm executing for this defer now, so I'm only going to execute the fields that are included in that defer. And I think that we were talking a lot about deduplication, and I kind of feel like with this issue solved that we should have the deduplication be a separate conversation. So yeah, so want to get your thoughts on that. Yakov did go and implement deduplication at the leaf field level. I think that there's some examples here. Yeah, so that's this example where is it that one? No, it's this one. Sorry. Yeah, so even though the fields were deduplicated out of here, the object is still sent. And yeah, so I guess kind of my thoughts are, I'm wondering if like we should use this algorithm in the spec and in the reference implementation and leave the deduplication at all as just an optional add-on, but we would be guaranteeing that paths are unique. Does that make sense?
So the algorithm that you guys already have is guaranteeing that it's not that's not deduplicated, but we still would leave that to the implementer.
The implementer, yeah.
So we
Yeah,
still
the
have
algorithm.
there
is, yeah. Sorry.
But so if you implement the spec, you don't have the problem, but you could do it maybe more efficient. So that's why we kind of say we leave it up to you. But if you implement this algorithm, it's all good.
Yes, the algorithm would guarantee that you always get one payload per path. It would not do any deduplication of any fields, but it would guarantee you get one payload per path.
That's good.
Then on top of that, I mean, Yakov does also have PRs on top of that do some amount of deduplication. Where it gets tricky is this case where you can't statically know how to do the deduplication. Either this payload could come first or this one could come first, and you would have to.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's
have
correct.
to know that. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we shouldn't expect that you get that it's current. So the client should expect that duplicate data might come along. That's my take on that.
Yeah, I feel like I'm not like dead set on any direction here. My initial thoughts are in the spec, we could write this algorithm that doesn't do deduplication, but have a note that if servers want to do that, they can. So clients should expect either it could be deduplicated or it could not. But if it is, any like prior payload should have all the fields that they're expecting. If they're recreating the response from the incremental results, then by the time you get one payload in, you should have all of the fields, whether they were in a previous one or in the current payload. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
I have a question. I don't actually understand what's problematic in this query. So, like, what I expected to do is like you get A, B, C, D in initial response, and when you get like E and F and G and H deferred. So like what the issue in particular?
Yeah, so initial response, you're going to get A, B, C, and D. Now, what if G and H are very slow, but E and F are fast? now you could get this payload first, and this payload shouldn't need to include A, B, C, D, E, F because it's already sent in the prior payload. But what if E and F are the slow ones and G and H are fast? Now you can get this whole payload first, and this one doesn't need to be sent at all. So you can't look at this query and statically decide how E and F should be deduplicated without knowing how long the execution takes.
Or you would sacrifice on, or maybe that you have to wait too long.
Right.
So it, as I understand, it's like it's more a question of like our current format of response. Is that like we, instead of doing like initial response and series of patches that can change everything, we tie to a place where defer originated. So like if we think about it, is like in semantics of initial response plus patch, there is no like issue here, but because our like response format is not patches, but like path plus object, it creates this problem.
Yeah, I mean, the way that I would, if I was writing this query, it would be likely I would have a UI that is rendering, that has like one component with this data in it and another component with this data in it. And I would want to make sure that that component isn't rendered until all of the data that's in here is returned. So
yeah, so like ABCD is part of initial response, right? There is no objection to that, and it's deduplicated from second defer, right? With Yakov's algorithm. So D is not there. Sorry, like, so it's just a question about wrapping types. So E and F, it's the same E and F. It's just a question that, like, first E and F is tied to different path that like second E and F. It's a question that the same question we had with labels. Labels forked execution because you attach labels to fields. Like in current GraphQL response, any field in response tied only to path. So like path is uniquely identify like any field in response. It cannot be like two fields with the same path because they're like in the same JSON. We had this problem with labels because we had like path plus label combination, and that's why we can have like different paths, different combination. Here we have like the same problem. We have effectively like path which is A, B, C, A, B, E, and F, path inside response, plus path where defer originated. So we have a combination of like, in both cases, path inside response logical path is the same, A, B, E, F, but we have different path of defer, which is in first case it's A, B. In the second case, it's like top level, so it's like empty array, and we effectively have like two F values, one F value tied to like to first defer, and second is like we create duplication. because in our response format, we tie response to a place where defer was placed. I don't know if it's hard to explain basically.
Yeah, no,
I'm like, in a sense, we create a little bit different. For me, it's like question similar to labels. For labels, it was easier because people didn't have a strong feeling about labels. They feel it's like additional feature, which why it was easier to remove it. Here, it's the same issue. Like we changed semantic of response. So previously we had like only one JSON object. Now it's not like one JSON object per series of patch, but instead it's one JSON object plus series of sub-objects tied to particular defer in which data can be duplicated, which is like way more complex mental model.
So what are you?
Maybe like, you know, like I don't want to block progress, but at the same time, I'm like, why I'm passionate about it. I think like in ideal scenario, we have like deterministic behavior of a server. The more deterministic, the better. Since like deduplication, we remove problem with the duplication, and we facing this issue, which prevent us like from. I'm okay if like if some stuff compete on a same level, but I'm not okay if something one server can duplicate something, another is not. So I'm have a strong feeling for it. So what I want to try and see can be, and it's like issue for me.
But
can we make it?
Just to hook that in, with defer and stream, we will anyway have difference of servers, right? One server might optimize a defer differently, so you get complete different defer structure because they did a naive implementation. Another server will implement it more efficiently, and you get less defers. So you already with defer and stream do not have the guarantee that you get the same defer structure or the same response structure as with a different server.
What I'm talking about is like idea that
I just want to point that out.
Yeah. You're right. You're right. It's in a sense of like I need to formulate properly. It's in a sense of like initial response plus deltas, but some deltas can be like merged in initially. So it's optimization. It's have real reason. It's like you need it because server need to be able to do that optimization. But this question, like with example F, it's a question of it's not requirement of a server. It's not like a requirement of like users of GraphQL. It's a requirement of how we define spec. And so I'm like, I want to explore option of, and I taken on me explore option. Can we make it like deltas approach more instead of like, especially since now we remove labels. I think it's like easier to implement like path algorithm, implement path algorithm than to create like weird semantics of like either static optimization or decide do you want to hold something. Because right now we're basically creating a question. If you don't want to duplicate field, you need to wait on some promises. You need to wait on sending stuff. So it's like trade-off.
Yeah, it's also a feature, right? It depends on how you look at it, because there could be many things going on in the server where you have concurrency issues where something gets slower or essentially deferred in the server. But this way if you formulate your query like that, then you get your then you get what we have there, the F, for instance, whenever one of the two payloads is ready.
I'm like one thing strange for me. It's like we merging fields, but in this case we're not merging it. So I'm like,
I know it's more my I'm more on this one. I'm more pragmatic, I would say.
Yeah,
but I agree. But I agree with you on this. So in general,
yes. So I want to explore like deltas. If we can do deltas and allow server to just send like say like this path, this data belong to this path, and you should apply it. Previously we discussed like JSON merge, I think it's called algorithm, and you said like it's hard because patching algorithm need to take into account arrays and you need to implement it. But I believe it's like I will try to implement it. I believe it's like 100 lines of code, 50 lines of code. So it's simpler than to create like with trade-offs and to create more complicated execution semantics.
Yeah, just what I think that is important is that a client is able to know when all of the fields that are inside of their defer are returned. Because like let's say you did write some kind of you wrote some kind of thing that deduplicated E and F out of this query, so out of this fragment. So this fragment only returns G and H. But if this E and F is coming afterwards, then it would be bad for the whatever UI component is tied to this fragment to render without F actually being available.
Yeah, it's again like this. These examples are very artificial, but as soon as you are working with proper components, then you're running into these like with proper fragments and stuff.
Hi, just a quick. How does changing the response to more of a patch? How would that get around this problem? Meaning, we would still have to sort of define what should be included within each patch.
Yeah. So how I look into this query is D is shipped initially, and E, F, and H shipped in subsequent payloads. Like they can be shipped in one incremental payload, one additional package, or they can be shipped in two, depending like if server thinks he can ship like F faster than H or H faster than F. So if we switch semantics to like initial response plus delta, there is no issue here. Send D in initial response.
But that would actually mean that you have to cache up or keep the result structure on the backend.
Yeah,
Exactly.
but we have
But that is actually a memory impediment. If you have huge results trees that you have to keep in the server alive to generate these deltas, that's a problem, performance-wise.
but it's the same problem if you remove all the defer from a query.
No,
you
no.
will
If
get-
if I now at the moment how we implement that, once we shipped a tree, so we rent memory in .NET. I'm renting memory. In this piece of memory, I'm creating a tree, and as soon as I delivered this tree to my response stream, it's gone. I don't need to know what data I did there because it's branched off. I just have to guarantee.
You mean on server, right? Right on server, not
Yeah.
on. We not. Yeah. But
So-
why you need to keep it on server if
Yeah.
like, if
How do you know what you've sent? So if you want to, so maybe I misunderstood you there, but if you want to generate like the patch structure or the data structure, you need to
Yeah.
know to what you're generating the data. Huh?
No, it's the same like idea when what Yakov implemented. I wrote like with things that on each level it's distinguish what stuff are like sent and what stuff is deferred. And when you fork, when you defer stuff, resolver like code around the resolver. No, it's like response path.
Yeah,
So,
I mean,
yeah, during execution, every resolver have access to response path, like in GraphQL.js, but you keep like response path, right? When you go into execution. So you just keep like, there is no like diffing, there is no like anything. You just, so idea is to execute F once and only once, and have it tied to particular response path and ship like delta based on that response path.
I need to see that because the way I think about it is like if you want to just execute it once, then the absolutely equally executing competing resolver needs to have either a lock that this doesn't happen. I mean, we are
yeah, like algorithm, like current collect field algorithm guarantee you that you get you executed resolver once, because everything is collected, all the nodes collected into array, and you execute stuff once. Stuff that Yakov implemented, I didn't check implementation, but
that is statically on the structure of the resolvers, right?
No, dynamically. Like at least Yakov in his comment, I didn't check his implementation. I wrote like last time, remember, explain you how you can deduplicate things. And Yakov wrote that he implement C-morphing or things that behave like I wrote there. I didn't check implementation, but that algorithm basically explain you explain how you can in one pass during execution, you can merge stuff, deduplicate stuff.
No, so I just want to just in terms of the algorithm that I use to make sure nothing shows up in a deferred payload that was sent to the initial payload is easy, because there's a guarantee that the initial payload will always be sent. So you just have to check whether that leaf was present in the initial payload. But to make sure that a deferred leaf doesn't show up in a late deferred payload, if it showed up in an earlier deferred payload, is not so easy. And I need to do a cache. I need to create so for every leaf. Now that my algorithm only works for leaves, so it only did deduplication for leaves. But even then, it has a problem of a cache.
Yeah, and in languages where you have real threading, not like in Node, you have to have like a mutex or something that guarantees that, and that would make execution really slow. So what we do in .NET is we compile the tree. Everything that you do dynamically, we have compiled once, only on the first execution, and then we run on that with every execution the same. So if we now start with figuring out on runtime these things, then you make all these servers slow that do that. At least my feeling here. So that's why I'm a bit it must work statically, or we have the thing that we send some data duplicate, but it will be still faster because we don't have to mutex.
So
I agree.
I think-
Hi everyone. Sorry, I'm a bit late. I'm not sure if you saw my messages in the chat, but I've basically said similar to Michael. I think that we should worry about merging things between like parent and child, but not between siblings or cousins, that kind of thing. And another reason for this, on top of the reasons that Michael just laid out, which also affect Grafast, is that if you want to stream large amounts of data, like gigabytes of data, for example, any kind of cache like that is going to grow and grow and grow. And I don't think that we should be having growing caches.
No.
okay. So to get the feedback on my proposal, the biggest worrying is like cache, and maybe I don't get something, but I believe I can try to do it without cache, and it can work without cache and stuff. Maybe during trying to implement it, I will find out that I actually need cache. But right now, I think it can be done without cache.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, Ivan, I implemented it with a weak map, and that will automatically free memory as you go, and that may help with what Benji's talking about. But not, but again, I think all this is optional, can be added. All the deduplication we could say is optional, and if somebody gets a great implementation later, we can go for it. I just, Ivan, what I would recommend, the case that I thought about is to make sure is, what if you have a list that's using the same grouped field set or same field group? You have to manage that also. So it's not something you can save on each field group set. You need it for each path.
Yeah, I also think the client should expect duplicated data, and if there's a server that figures it out how to completely deduplicate things, fine with that. But if you, for instance, it could also be a design choice to duplicate certain data because you just can produce it so much faster, because you have no locking. You essentially can do two things in the backend at once and just send it down, and it's just much faster. And that's why I really think we should just say you can deduplicate it, and in these cases you should, but don't force an algorithm on that.
So
that's basically how I phrased it in the spec, except I didn't say which cases, like, that you should, although we could work on that.
No, and the should is just if we find some cases which are really simple, like, okay, this is so simple, we should always get it. But we should leave that
the initial payload is the simplest one, because we always know that's sent first, and you don't actually need a cache for that. You can just inspect, what was requested first as you go.
But still, then, is it only true that it's simple just for leaf fields, where then you could be sending a bunch of empty objects?
Correct.
Yeah. So basically, to move it forward, I will try to without focusing on response format. Question right now and main concern right now can a deduplication be done effectively without locking and without interlocking data between each other, so data ships as they execute, and there is no like locking, and everything can be figured out statically, but it should not require query planning in a spec, right?
Exactly.
Okay, so if this always thing can be achieved, deduplication is behavior that we all want, right? In ideal world.
Sure. So in general, deduplication is preferable if we can do it, and I would say, like, there are things.
As long as there's no other costs that you incur by deduplication.
Exactly. Because sometimes, as I said, it can be faster to duplicate. And the essence is that we don't have duplicated data in a single response. And that's what, if you look at GraphQL now, it deduplicates a field merging, but that's just one response. Now we have multiple, and that's why I find it okay. But we're still doing field merging within these patches. And there's also, like, what I did with Hot Chocolate is, with query planning, we get a lot of cases out there. But for instance, the case that Rob showed here, where you have competing differs, that's difficult because you can only make the one wait for the other. Otherwise, you cannot really deduplicate it without blocking them. Because they're competing for delivery.
Either I don't get something or it's possible. So I will try, and outcome it's possible, or I will learn, I will understand why it's not possible. And in this case, Michael, you implemented it, so you have like more deeper knowledge. Maybe I need to try to implement it myself and go into a corner and understand why not, because right now I don't understand why not. So yeah, it would be exercise for me. Sorry for diversion conversation, but I wanted to mention it and see, like, if it's like end goal is like we agreed on the end goal, and the question is it possible or not? So yeah, I got my answer.
No, I think it's good to discuss it.
Yeah.
So my question is, if we want to like break this down into the simplest thing, could we move forward with a spec algorithm that guarantees a single payload per path, and but does not specify any deduplication, but says that deduplication is allowed as long as you're only deduplicating a field, as long as you're deduplicating fields that were sent in prior payloads? I feel like that's like the most flexible way to go forward, because then the spec could be updated to have deduplication if Ivan or someone else figures out a clever, good way to do it. If servers can do it, clients should be able to handle either deduplication or non-deduplication, either way. Yeah, what's everyone's thoughts on that?
I think it sounds good. It sounds reasonable to go this way.
Yeah, one quick note. My attempt to do this thing, it's totally parallel issue. But if it's successful, I will raise a question about tweaking response format a bit, because in current form it's not compatible. But before that, the main question is we discuss is it possible or not to do it performant without cache and everything else. So yeah, but I believe it should not take long to try. So we can do it. I can try to finish it before next working group, main working group. So it's not locking anything. and we can discuss it when or on one of these meetings.
Okay. Yeah, I think that it would be good to settle just the merging in one, just have a direction for there, and then we could iterate on the pending objects and I also want to go back to one of the previous issues about stream, where I think that with this merging now we could simplify. I think yeah, I want to. Sorry, this issue is very long, hard to find what I'm looking for. Yeah, I think that once we settle on this, I also want to talk about the stream path again. And I think that the reason that we could maybe drop this, and that would give better symmetry for like pending with a stream list and also getting completed. We could have the same path for each one. But yeah, so next steps. Ivan, you're going to look at that implementation, and I'll add an agenda to the meeting on Thursday. And I guess we can talk about it then there with the wider group. What do you guys think?
Yeah, makes sense. Could we touch on Benoit? You had a question about label going away down further in the discussion thread. Did we get the a full answer there? Like implementing the parser for your work, for example, Benoit, is that going to cause massive problems without the label?
Yeah, I think this was addressed when deciding that basically they will. We want. I mean, the way going forward is that we want to have one payload per path.
Right.
On the other hand, the other issue I have is that I mean, on our side, the fact that we generate parsers is that it's gonna be hard to. It's gonna be hard if we can't really know in advance for each path which fields we can receive or not. I still need to wrap my head around this, but I think this will be a problem for us.
Okay.
But what about so what can be done is, there are two things here. One thing is that we kind of moved this issue out a bit with fragment aliasing, and the second thing here is that you can work around it. Like, did you guys look into the thing that Matt proposed? And we tried it out, and with that we figure out most things. Like you have a fragment, and then you use the type name field and alias it to a section that you want to have marked with it. And when you find that, you know that the fields that you have in this selection set where you have this marker are fulfilled. I can give you a quick example. Give me a second. So just grab this and just quickly have a look. Yeah, there. So typically,
Do you want to share your screen?
I should be
That's
off.
neat. You're able to share your screen at the same time now and select the screen you want to see. I never noticed that before with Zoom, but
that works forever.
Oh wow, I've never noticed.
It's also with Slack if you do a huddle. But
that's really interesting. Okay, good to know.
okay, so the problem is now also if we dump differs, right? The label doesn't help you in any case, because the moment the server starts optimizing differs here, you get a problem because the server could decide this differ gets optimized, right?
Right.
And to figure out if you have delivered something in your selection set, you can use a marker. For instance, this type name. This type name would be merged, but the workaround that works really well is to have such a marker here. And if I execute that now, get rid of that. It's flagging here, and you should see somewhere my marker, which is called price details. There. And now I can probe. If this is there, then I know the associated fields here are there. That's what Facebook essentially did. And so the idea forward is to formalize it that actually nicer to introduce something like this. I actually had a slide.
I feel like with this proposal, though, you shouldn't need to do that.
Depends really on how you build your tree, because we still have the problem, or
which problem?
That if I drop a defer, then and I wait for the trigger of some, because you don't. That's the second part. You now have the pending stuff, right? And with the pending, you know that, but that could be more complex for clients to implement drop actually.
Yeah,
because because in the client you need to know that a component is fulfilled in a certain section of your graph, and we are announcing now what we will defer, and this is the inverse. We're not telling you what we are not deferring or where we dropped it. It could be yeah, go ahead.
I think maybe the question is that if we have defers at the same level and we're merging them together, maybe we should say that the server should either, at this particular path, if there's defers, it shouldn't drop some defers and not others. It should either drop all of them at that path, or the ones that are merged together, right?
Yeah, but typically you have like this structure that I had here, where I now produce thousands of defers because I combine these. But now if I drop this, for instance, now I just have the stream up here, but no more defers down here.
Right, but either you're going to see the logic of checking is this type name in here.
Yeah.
It could be the inverse, where is there that payload in? Is there a pending with that path?
There are a couple of ways around that, right?
Yeah, I mean that's why we're putting the pending in there, isn't it? So like if we wanted to, so you didn't need to use the type name. That was my understanding.
No, I didn't have the understanding. I think the last discussion we had is that we put this thing off. It's say, we say we can solve that either with the type name still, or in combination with the pending, or at some point we will introduce something like fragment modularity, which fully solves that. Because that's still what Matt is working on. It's the other proposal. And that would then fully solve this componentization problem, right?
Yeah, but that introduces a trade-off of.
Yeah. Okay. You're right. You have a couple of solutions here, and they have different trade-offs, but it's solvable what you want to do. Either you have a marker, or you check for the pendings that you have that are announced. With the pendings, you actually can see what is deferred, and then you should know that subtrees are complete, because if a subtree essentially doesn't tell you that there are more defers coming, then you know it's complete. That's a way you could also track it.
Right. Yeah. My understanding was that by putting pending in there, that we wouldn't need to rely on the type name hack. So if there's a situation where pending isn't cutting it, then I think we should formalize what that is.
Yeah, you're right.
Yeah,
I have
Ivan.
quick question to Benoit, just to understand if I correctly understand the problem. So you have a custom, you generate parsers for data field inside incremental, based on previously generated based on label. So if you saw like a particular label, you use particular parser, right? For stuff inside the data.
It's not exactly like that. What we have in the generated code, each fragment is its own structure, and then we, when reading the payloads, we assemble them in a very JSON way. So it's like patching the JSON, and then we pass that to our parser. And what it does is that it will try to read each fragment or not, depending on if we have received the. We use the path and the label, and we used also the label to know if we should read each fragment or not. And so, if we don't have a label and we know that each path is, we can uniquely identify a fragment, that also works. But
question. Okay, so like it's not JSON parser. It's like stuff that get that fields necessary to fill particular fragment, right?
yeah.
So okay, and these fragments work with normalized store. You have normalized store, right? And
yeah.
you can populate with stuff from normalized store. And during incremental, you also put stuff in normalized store, right? Or
yeah.
So you can, if you can check fragment against normalized store and see if all the data there, is it enough for a fragment? And you have a code that populate fragment from normalized store. Why you need anything special for incremental? You can populate normalized store after each part of incremental delivery and work through normalized store.
Normalized store is optional, though.
Yeah.
I think that's something that could be shut off.
Yeah.
It's not something you can depend on being there always, Simon.
Ooh.
Yeah, so in case if it's like global normalized store is shut down, we still have a code that work with it. So we can create small normalized stores, just like temporary normalized store until this query is finished, and dispose it after like we got all the responses. So yeah, and we actually discussed it on a working group when we agreed on a merging, and it's known trade-off. When we agreed on a merging, we said like clients now needs to understand what stuff shipped or not shipped. It needs to understand what's inside fragment, and did you hydrated fragment, or you like fully or partially, or didn't hydrate it at all. So it's like it's trade-off of merging stuff. We cannot do deduplication, optional or like enforced by spec. We still like discussing that, but we did a turn toward merging stuff and deduplicating stuff, and that mean you need to do like stuff is more dynamic for you. It's not like this label contain all the stuff that necessary for this fragment. we make a turn to say like clients need to. And during discussion, my exact argument was, since most of the clients have normalized store anyway, and they have like code to work with it, so it's the same functionality basically. Either you use global normalized store, or you create like separate one for just for this query until it's get finished, and you track stuff there. But you need to do like patching.
No, I see. Yeah, that makes sense. What you said, I think. Yeah.
Yeah, I can see getting in a situation where you're not sure if fields are being deferred or not, if the server like has a bunch of defers at the same level that should be merged together, but decides to inline some of them but not the others. So I'm thinking that we shouldn't allow that.
Mm-hmm.
Like either you should just, does that make sense?
So if you drop a defer, it's on the so what was your understanding, Rob, that you drop it dynamically at runtime, or? I mean,
No,
it
like,
should be
like if we like the way that we were talking about how the server should be able to drop any like inline any defers that it wants to.
Yeah,
it should make that decision after they're merged, not before they're merged, right? Do you think that makes sense?
After they merged. So it should be predictable at the beginning. So when you have essentially the moment you start executing, that decision should have been done, no? So that you, if you invoke 2 times the server, you get 2 times the same defer structure. If you invoke the same server, so it shouldn't be like while you're executing, you decide now you reach this threshold and now we are dropping, because this way you could get very strange results. Because for all what I'm worth is like the server should if the server wants to drop all the defers.
Yeah. So this, let's say this example, there's going to be 2 payloads here, one with the defer path at the root and one with the defer path under nested object.
Mm-hmm.
If the server decides to ignore this defer but not this one, then bar gets in line to the initial response, but foo doesn't, or maybe the other way around. Then I think it's hard for a client to know. It sees this, it has a pending path at nested object, but it doesn't know that it doesn't need to wait for bar anymore. So I think as you're going through collect fields and now you've collected bar and foo, and you know that there's one defer at this path with these 2 fields, that's when you should be like, I've already deferred too many stuff, I'm just inlining it.
Yeah.
Or you should decide I'm going to defer both of them together. So this way your path.
Because you're traversing essentially the query tree, and that means you're going from the top and further in, and then so I think it wouldn't make sense to remove the first from the outer, because you don't know if it's too much, or it's most likely the deeper nested defers that get you into trouble.
Yeah, if this whole thing was inside of a list that had 10,000 items, and then you'd only decide you're going to at max have like 20 payloads, then after the 20th item on the list, you're going to ignore both of these defers, but you shouldn't decide that I'm going to keep deferring the foos but not the bars because they're at the same path. Because if you did that, then I think that you would have to resort to having the type name under both of these fields to know.
Yeah. So I anyways think very statically on that. I mean, what we technically do is we analyze the query, and we look essentially like the complexity algorithms that are out there. We look for the maximums where it can go. I personally wouldn't defer things in a list and then at item 20 stop deferring the same thing in the list. I would do predictions on, okay, this list, the user asked for 50 items. If they are just 5, I don't care, because I don't want to do these checks at runtime. So because we compile query plans from it.
But you wouldn't know at
Yeah, I do
when you're compiling how many items are on the list, right?
I don't care because you asked for 50 items, so I expect that you hit the maximum.
Okay.
That's how you can do it statically. So if a user asks for 2 items in the paging, for instance, then we can expect that this user that there are a maximum of 2 items. If you don't ask for fixed items, then we, for instance, look at what's the default page size that we have configured in the server. Like, let's say it's 15 or so. So we expect the user is passing in a variable, and the maximum allowed is 15. Then it's probably 15. And that's how we do that very statically. And then you have a very predictable defer structure.
Okay, but whether you're doing it statically or dynamically, it's just I don't think it matters. It's just that you should decide whether you're going to be enabling the defer at the path level and not the individual fragment, since they're all going to be merged together.
Yes.
Does that make sense?
Yes, that makes sense to me.
So just to clarify, mental model here is like we have query without like any messed up query, but any optimization and margin that we do should result in a query. Like you kind of, in all our example, we're rewriting one query to like optimize one, but you cannot do like dynamic optimization. You cannot decide different for items inside the array. Like on one item, I want to inline it. On other item, I don't want to inline it. You cannot do that. You can rewrite a query or execute, but mental model, you can do it like inside your execution engine, depending do you use query planning or not. But mental model is like you rewriting one query into another. It's a first thing, and second thing is like as Rob suggestion, you either like when you rewrite a query during this rewrite, you decide if you remove all the defer on the same level or not. Is it right? Is it I get your discussion correctly? So like everything is static. There is no like dynamic during actual execution.
No,
that wasn't
no.
the way I was thinking of it. I was thinking that it could be dynamic. It's just that if you're deciding to drop defers for performance, which we want to allow, that you should drop all of them at the same path or none of them at the same path. That was all I'm saying, just so that when you get like a pending with a path and then a result with a path, you know that you got all the deferred stuff, or if you never get the pending, then you know that all the stuff is in the query.
Okay.
Otherwise, like if you have like one component that's rendering foo and one component that's rendering bar, and you see a path that's on nested object, you have to not render the foo component, because it doesn't, you won't know if even maybe it's in the response or not. You don't know if it is.
I mean, it's the same thing that we have with the path delivery, right? It's essentially bound to the path.
Right.
Yeah. So the question here is like, if nested object is array, for example, and you have like in item 0, you inline both foo and bar. In item 1, can you defer foo and bar?
I was thinking yes. but just because they're different paths. But
Okay.
yeah, I was thinking yes, but I haven't spent a ton of time thinking about it. I just thought of it during this meeting. I think Michael's
Yeah, I was
implementation
also
wouldn't do that.
thinking yes for that reason.
Pardon? That was a bit, I couldn't understand that.
Sorry, I was just agreeing with Rob.
Okay,
On the
it's my-
on the how we drop the first, right? I think he meant that. Yeah, it's a very bad audio quality, but
Yeah, if
Yeah.
you can read, please read it, write it in the chat. And we lost Hugh.
Yeah, he said that he had to run.
Yeah. Yeah.
We're past time now.
yeah, I mean it was a good thing. So Ivan wants to branch something out, and but
One clarification. Because I made the promise and I just understand there is like different context. By working group, I meant main working group. So like
Yeah.
before next group, main working group next month, I will try to have like to show either I can do it or agree that it's like not possible to do
sure.
easily.
And I mean we go ahead anyway for now, and if you have
Yeah.
something figured out, then we can discuss.
So there's a working group meeting on Thursday this week. That's not what you're referring to. You mean the next main one
Yeah.
in the
Yeah.
first week of
Yeah.
February.
Yeah, my assumption is like we will probably not move to next stage on Thursday, but we aim to do that next month, and to not prevent like from moving to next stage next month, like on main working group, I will like do it before next main working group, and it's not a blocker for Thursday, right?
No.
Ideas, yeah, that will probably change stages on main working group for big features like that. Anyway, right? Okay.
Right. So I'm going to add myself to the agenda on Thursday.
Yeah.
And I'll summarize what we talked about. How I think that there's some level of agreement on how we could move forward without deduplication, but guaranteeing unique paths. And you're going to keep working on that and see if it could be optimized. But yeah, so then that's what I'll report on, and we'll see if there is any other input on Thursday. Sound good?
I'm good.
Cool. All right.
Goodbye.
Yeah. Thank you everyone for joining. And this should be on the calendar every week now. So see you all next Monday, if not Thursday.
Thank you.
Goodbye.
All right. See ya.
See you then. Bye, everyone.
Bye.